at planning, and more specifically on 6.1, actions to reduce the risks and opportunities that you may have identified. So what this is asking you to do is to assess what risks there may be to your company and to your quality management system, assess those risks, identify those risks, and then do something about it. So put in place some sort of action, corrective action or action which will reduce the consequences of those risks, and then reassess those risks to identify whether or not what you've done and what actions you've taken have really improved the consequences or eliminated that risk to the company. So there isn't, as with all of the standard clauses, there isn't like a hard and fast way of doing this, and they kind of leave it open to interpretation of how you can go about doing this. So really it's up to you to kind of determine how you might want to identify those risks and lay it out in a document. But what I'm going to do is go through one way that we've done it, and I've done it and created a form to use, which might be useful for you, but it's only been useful for us in terms of how we identify and assess those risks, and then the actions, and then how we go about assessing what actions we've taken. So if we go into Word and have a look at this, effectively what we've created is a risk identification and assessment sheet. And then what I've done is given this to each department manager within our company, and they've then gone through and identified, and I've asked them to do at least 3 risks for their department. But if there's more, then obviously there's as many risks as possible that you can identify and do something about it, the better for the overall organisation. So this particular sheet just asks the individual to put down the department, who's responsible for that particular department, and then the date of the initial assessment. And it's important to have the initial assessment date on there, because when we come down to the bottom part, which as a company we review these on a regular basis as part of our management reviews, you want to be able to put a date in there listed as any changes. So having the initial assessment date is a good thing, so when you go to review it you can show when this risk was first identified and what you've done about it and when you reviewed it. So then what I've done is ask each department manager, once they've described and identified each risk, is then go on to describe the consequences of it, whether it's financial, people-based or reputation. It could be anything really, but the consequences of the risk really need to be understood, because what we then do is we go on to actually rate that risk. So what I've done there is taken this particular assessment matrix where you've got the consequence of the risk and the likelihood of it happening, and this assessment matrix allows someone to really rate the risks. So as an example, if it was something which was likely to happen on a frequent basis, but it was only a small consequence, then it's not going to have a very significant risk, so you'd have a medium rating. But if it was a critical consequence and it was going to happen on a frequent basis, then you'd have it as an extreme risk. So we'll go through some examples in a second, but that's really how I've kind of asked our guys to assess the different risks they've come up with. So consequence and likelihood are something which is really important to look at, because if you've got something which is going to happen on a frequent basis and is really critical, then obviously that's something you want to do something about, because it could have an extreme impact on the business. But if it's happening on a low basis, a low likelihood and a low or minor consequence, then it's not really something you want to do something about. And it's important to understand that not all risks can really be mitigated. You can't stop the risk of some things happening, because they will, by the nature of whatever that risk is, happen. So some things you just got to accept that you can learn to live with, but providing you've done this assessment and you've put in place something to kind of reduce the likelihood of that happening or reduce the consequence of that thing happening, then it's something you can perhaps live with. And we'll have a look at some examples in a second. So that's really the assessment matrix I've asked the guys to use. So if we go back to the form, we want to talk about what actions may have already been taken to reduce the risk. So we've got a box in there, whether there's any further actions that can be taken, and then ask them to put a date into that, and that will be then fed back into the management review. And then maybe if it's a significant thing, we put an objective in place which we review then each management review to assess the progress towards achieving that objective, and therefore reducing the risk or consequence of the thing happening. Then it's important then to review the actions. So the clause specifically mentions the evaluation of the effectiveness of those actions. So again, this form allows you to do that, because if you put in place the information required in this box, it then asks you to assess these actions that have taken place. So then you go back to your risk assessment matrix and you say, you know, because of this, the risk is now this, and because of this, the likelihood of it occurring is this. So then again, you rate it in there, and then that's effectively that sheet complete. And then down the bottom you've got dates reviewed and any changes. So what you'd hope to see is, by identifying this risk, taking some action, the risk is then being reduced in terms of consequence or likelihood. So if we have a look at an actual worked example, we've got two here, both relating to our marketing department. So a risk that was identified was the websites could potentially be hacked. So obviously you've got reputational damage there, because you know they might be linked to other websites. So if a hacker gets into your site and then redirects it to, say, pornographic site or a competitor site, and there's a potential risk to reputation there. There's also potential loss of orders, so companies or suppliers or customers are out there trying to place business, they come across your website and it's not working, then potentially you've lost a potential order, so you've lost turnover and profits. And then there could be potential loss of the work that's put in there, so websites take a lot of time and effort to maintain and create. If you've put a lot of money or resource into that, then potentially that work or resource could be lost. There's a cost there, and then also the cost to rectify it, so you've got to bring someone in to fix the website. It could be quite a significant cost to the company there to do that. So really this is going to be down to your own company, but for us the likelihood of it happening is occasional. So we have been hacked in the past, and it's a possibility it might happen again in the future. I've rated the consequences as being really high, so like I said, there's cost of reputation, potential loss of orders, cost to finances, having to rectify the problem, so it's quite a significant consequence. So then we've rated that as medium. So you've got occasional and high, which then gives you a medium. So occasional and high gives you a medium risk on the risk assessment matrix. So then what we've said is basically, based on the last time we were hacked, we've moved the websites to a more secure server. We use something called WordPress for our website, so we've started using more backups, security plugins to be put on there, fewer plugins in general, so reducing the risk of out-of-date software. So that's what we've already done, and at the time of doing this there wasn't anything else we felt we could really do to improve the security of the website. So then what we've done is then assess the chances or the likelihood of it happening again. I've said it's gone from occasional to remote. The consequences would still be high, so risk rating is still medium, but effectively what we've done is reduce the likelihood of it happening, so it's something we feel that we can really live with. So that's a quick run through, and then what we've done is printed these off, kept them within a printed quality manual, so the review dates and any changes are then noted on that, and if a new assessment was made and any changes were made to that, we'd then update the original document and then print that off and store that within the file. Then we've also done another one, just an example, so this really relates to, as opposed to what we've got here, which is a website, so an online system. We've then also got one potential risk is of people leaving the company and loss of knowledge that could create. So what we've done here is talked about the marketing guy, who's myself, leaving the company. So that'll create an effective loss of knowledge, because as a marketing person I know all the marketing related software, the passwords that we use, the firms that we deal with to support our marketing efforts. So it could mean that opportunities for marketing and promotion are lost, and therefore you're having to re-establish new relationships, find out those passwords. There could be some potential costs in relation to doing that. So we've assessed the likelihood of it happening as occasional, because people do leave companies. The consequences wouldn't be significant, but it would be moderate because there would be a loss of knowledge there. So again, the risk rating is medium, but then what we've done is, by doing this, we've been able to identify it's important to record passwords specifically for marketing software, share that with those relevant staff, but also because of that loss of knowledge and how to use these pieces of software, we've brought in a chap called Matt who's been shown how to use things, or will be shown how to use things like WordPress, MailChimp and AdWords, which is all the marketing related software that we use. So what we've done there is then gone back and reassessed the consequences. So it's still occasional that people do leave companies, but the consequences should now be minor, whereas before they were moderate, because that knowledge and information has been shared. And that's something we're doing across all the organisation and all the different departments, is identifying what the key pieces of information are, and then recording that information and making those members of staff keep track of what they know and what they should pass on to new people if, for example, they left, or it could happen if they died or retired, or if they were sacked. So that information and retaining that information is really key and important, particularly for organisations, knowledge-based organisations who rely on that knowledge as a part of their competitive advantage. So within a manufacturing operation, it could be with certain supervisors who particularly know how to run machines in a certain way. So making sure they're passing that knowledge on to other members of staff is really important, and it should be part of an organisation's general succession planning anyway. But this process has really been able to identify it, and using this sheet, it's quite a neat way of laying it out. Kind of ticks all the boxes from an auditor's point of view. So if you wanted to use this, then please feel free to do it. If you've got any questions about this particular sheet, then that's something you can ask either in the comments below. And if you've got any other questions relating to ISO 9001, please send them to me, ideally via the comments. So make sure you subscribe for more videos coming up in the future.